All right. Looks like we're live. My little thing says we're live. I've still got my great grandmother's quilt behind me because it's the only way to stop the sound from bouncing around so much, and it looks better than the leopard looking quilt that I have. So, this one's a big one for me, and hopefully I don't get stupid and emotional. But this guy, my guest today, he checked out the famous comedy store after he had a gig at the Magic Castle in Los Angeles, and then he decided to give stand up a shot. And since then, he's proceeded to make audiences nearly pass out from laughing since the mid 70s. His manic stage presence and ability to morph into memorable and hilarious characters made him popular on the talk show circuit. He appeared on the Mike Douglas Show, Merv Griffin, the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and had over 40 appearances between both of David Letterman's shows on NBC and CBS. He has two critically acclaimed Showtime specials and has appeared on more TV shows and movies than you can shake a stick at, including Dukes of Hazzard, American Hot Wax, Baywatch, and so many others. It's Jeff Altman. Let's bring him out right now.
Hey, hey, hey.
Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Scott.
And before I forget, Mark Scheffler says hi.
Oh, we'll say hi right back.
Okay, yeah, he was one of my early guests, and so what I'm doing is I'm collecting Comedy Store comics for my podcast, and I have to get the whole set. So you're helping me get the whole set, so I appreciate that.
Well, it's entirely my pleasure.
Yeah, so I hope you don't mind if I do a little bit of fanboy fawning over you a little bit, because I do want to talk about my history with you a little bit, watching you on the
Sure.
TV, because I was just a Midwest guy, and you know what we got to see in the Midwest? We got to see Carson and Merv and Johnny and Mike Douglas. That's about all we got. We didn't have a comedy club or anything like that. So that was what we had to watch. And I discovered you not too long after I discovered Tom Dreesen. And the ritual was for me is we'd get the TV guide and I'd go through the TV guide and I'd look at all the talk shows and I'd look for you or Dreesen, Letterman, any of those people that I was just in love with, and then I'd watch when I could. And I made a lot of late nights when I was in school, but I really, really enjoyed your performances. And the funny thing is in the last couple weeks, since I knew I was going to have you on the show, I've gone back on YouTube and rewatched some of that stuff, and I just cracked up again. And I'm not a nostalgic type of guy. Like, music doesn't take me back, but comedy for some reason does. And I was like, this is exactly as funny as I remembered it. And you just, for some reason, I just remember like doubling over laughing watching your stuff, just sitting up by myself in our living room.
Well, thank you. Geez, that's very nice. I'm surprised after going back and rewatching, you still wanted me on the show.
Yeah. I think you are, one of the most unique and just all around funny comedians I've ever seen. And there's an article in Esquire where it came out in 2015 where Letterman and Jerry Seinfeld talked about you and the genius of Jeff Altman. Jeff Altman. I was glad that I found that and reread that because there's some good stuff in that, and I posted that for my listeners to take a look at too. But I do want to get into the whys and how you did it. One of the reasons I started this podcast is to give new comedians some helpful tips on how to get their career going and how to write and be funny and stuff like that.
You know why, Scott? You know why? Because there just isn't enough comedians in this country.
Yeah, I
know. If you walk into a Denny's, any Denny's,
yes,
and say, "Are there any stand-up comics here?" Four people will rise.
Yeah. And some of them that say they are did an open mic once, and now all of a sudden they think they are, but that's neither
Yeah,
here nor there. There are a lot of people who are interested in being a comedian, and that's why my listenership is good. But, South Bend, where I came from, not a big city, not a whole lot around. I mean, it's fairly close to Chicago, but there was probably 25 comedians that would show up at the open mic every
oh
Tuesday night.
sure,
So, and I'm down here in Huntsville, and it looks like the same type of crowd, except for there's a few more. So it's amazing how many people want to do it, and you know this this show is basically me learning how to do it because I started when I was 52, and so I'm learning, and they're learning, and hopefully people get some good nuggets from it. But
yeah. Well,
go ahead.
good. It's great that you're doing this. This is a service to all of America.
Yeah, yeah. Now, one of the things that struck me as far as you're concerned is, I read all your bios, and you're pretty high strung as a youngster. I mean, one of your bios says you had a special chair in the principal's office in grade school, and then when you were at Johns Hopkins, you got kicked out of the library for dressing as a bush, and so it almost feels like you were compelled to be as manic as you were. Is that kind of accurate?
I don't know whether it was manic or delinquent,
Yeah.
uh, but there was a chair for me in the office, and in sixth grade, I was the first person to be suspended from Edward Smith School in Syracuse, New York.
All
In the
right.
history of the school, they said, "You can't come back without your mom."
Uh-huh. Well, that's a good record to have there.
Oh, sure. I'm terribly proud of my past.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're just naturally a funny guy, but you were not that's not what you were going for because, dad was a very good magician, and you wanted to get into the sleight of hand type magic
Right.
with cards and the like. So, and is that what took you to Los Angeles? Was, it was
Yes.
the
Yes. I got out of college in '74, and I drove all the way to Los Angeles from my hometown of Syracuse, New York. And my father was arguably one of the very best card guys with a deck of cards in the United States.
Mhm,
And people from all over the country would come to visit us in Syracuse just to see him do stuff.
mhm,
And very friendly with a guy named Ed Marlowe, who was very good in Chicago, and he knew Di Vernon very well, who was considered the best of the 20th century. And I became friendly with both of those people, luckily because of my dad.
mhm,
And so I was doing a good amount of card magic. By the time I left Hopkins in '74, I had met a guy in Baltimore named Frank Thompson, who was a very famous card magician,
mhm.
and another guy named Cy Keller and Howie Schwartzman. And these were kind of my mentors while I was in college. And then when I would come home for the summer, then my dad and I would review all the new material, and he would show me gradually, incrementally show me more and more stuff.
Uh-huh. And so, 4 years at Johns Hopkins, and you decide you come out of it and you wanna be a magician. So you did get that gig at the Magic Castle, but can you tell me what happened at
Well,
the Comedy
actually,
Store when you walked in?
it was 4 years at Johns Hopkins, two of them as a patient.
Yeah. And a test subject, right?
That's right. But by the time I graduated from school, I was pretty adept with playing cards, and
Mhm,
I went out to the Magic Castle, and my goal was to be a work the Magic Castle and be a funny card guy,
Mhm.
close up sleight of hand person.
Right.
And so then one night in 1974, when I got out there, I went over to the Comedy Store and somebody mentioned Syracuse, New York. I stood up and went, "Yay!" And
Uh-huh.
Mitzi Shore, who owned the Comedy Store, sent a guy over to my table and said, "The owner of the store would like you to leave." So I was kicked out of the store, the Comedy Store, the first time I was there. And I remember saying to myself, "Well, I'll never come back here."
Uh-huh.
but but I did, and subsequently it was before Monday night audition night, and it was on a Saturday night, and there weren't enough people to actually go on.
Okay.
And I walked over to Mitzi and I said, "Hi, my name is Jeff Altman. I've just been out here a short time. I do some impressions. Could I go up on stage?" She said, "Well, Altman, yeah, if you want to, go ahead. There's nobody left to go on." So I walked up on stage and I did okay. And she
Uh-huh.
said, "Well, you can come back." And I stayed there for another 30 years.
Wow. So, if people haven't seen your act, they don't understand what they're getting into. I mean, this is an immersive, I know you've been compared to Robin Williams, but you're different than that. I mean, you were the impressions and doing your dad and the physicality and all that. You were in the maybe a similar realm, but you were different. So
We
how
were
I
we
mean,
were
you
we
did.
were very much alike, and we were good friends. And in fact, my daughter sent me a picture the other night. I don't know where she got it from, but it was me and Robin on stage at the Comedy Store, and our shirts were off.
Yeah.
And that was before Bert Kreischer.
Yeah. I don't think he ever wears a shirt.
No, I don't quite understand that, but he's a
Yeah.
funny guy.
So, how did you come up you went up that first time and did the impressions. How did you come up with that act, though?
Well, it took a long time and a lot of watching and a lot of hanging around the store night after night after night. And you begin to realize, I think, what the level of being funny is, where what bar you need to cross in order to attract some laughs.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of good guys working there at the time. George Miller,
Mhm.
uh, Tim Thomerson, Letterman by the end of 75. And you sort of, and the bar was getting raised and raised and raised.
Mhm.
And so unlike I think Letterman, who was always just himself, I realized what I had to do to get funny. And this fellow named Tim Thomerson, does that ring a bell?
Oh, yeah. He's on my list. So, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
one of the very funniest guys to ever do stand up.
Yeah.
And he influenced me a great deal in that he was really doing what you do in high school to make people laugh, but he was doing it in a more sophisticated way on stage.
Mhm.
So I went back to my old high school stuff, where I would jump out the windows of my physics class and
Yeah.
all that physical crap, and I started doing it on stage, smashing my head on a bar stool to open my act,
Uh-huh.
and uh, stuff that didn't require much of an IQ, but nevertheless, I guess it was my energy that sustained me.
Yeah, in watching that back, there is really no time to breathe. I mean, you're laughing so hard, and there's the Showtime special, Sweet and Meaty. Um,
You never,
I'm
you never,
watching the.
you never got to see the other one. They never. I think they showed it once, and then they put it in the can.
Oh,
It's the
did they?
it's the best thing I ever did in my career.
Oh, wow. Can
But
you get
but
it back?
I think I have a copy here.
Okay,
Uh,
that's good.
but they should run it now. It was me
Yeah.
doing my character Carl. That kind of guy,
Yeah.
never drunk, never sober.
Yeah.
Everybody has an uncle like him.
Yeah.
Get out of my face, buddy, before I slap you. One of those guys.
Yeah.
And it was based all on that character. And there had been I guess, a robbery in the the city he lived in, and he went on camera to talk about it, and it was all about him watching TV to see himself come on TV, and it was really very good. The strange
Uh,
thing about it though is one female, probably about 29 years old, walked up to me one day and said, "You know, the character you did wasn't very likable." And so she didn't get it at all.
yeah.
And she was one of the execs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was just nuts.
Yeah, well, that's the same type of person that thought, Archie Bunker was playing it straight,
Right.
yeah, the you just don't get the satire part.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So talking about the physical stuff, I mean, you were a pretty athletic guy, but hitting your head on that bar stool and then going on your back, did you ever injure yourself doing that?
You know, it's very funny you asked me that, Scott, because 3 years ago, I live now in Raleigh, North Carolina,
Uh-huh,
and I had to go out to Duke, which is the finest hospital situation here and one of the finest universities in the country.
uh-huh.
And I had my back had to be fused.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was years and years of falling down and rolling around and doing dropping to the ground and all that stuff, I think contributed to the surgery.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you were good at it. You landed well, but the distance from which you flipped to, hitting the ground, there's nothing you can do about that, and it's not like a wrestling ring where they have it padded and
No,
springs and all that stuff.
no, very often you were on a stage that had tile. And
Yeah.
so, and so I'd hit the dirt and it wasn't always comfortable.
Mhm. So you stood out pretty quickly once you got I think maybe Merv was one of your first,
The
talk show
first,
gigs?
the
Yeah,
first.
and you stood out pretty quickly and you became kind of a hot commodity, and I mean, you were just all over the place for quite a while, and, were you ready for that? Did that how did that affect you?
It didn't happen. It happened relatively quickly.
Mhm,
Um, my friend, God bless him, who passed away, Ricky Jay, the magician,
mhm,
was always amazed at how he thought it went very quickly. He
mhm,
that he had been in the business for years and nothing had happened until he got later in life, and uh, in a short time I was on TV. I was on TV within a year
mhm,
of coming out there, and then after that I started doing the Mike Douglas show on a regular basis, and then the Tonight Show on some regular basis, and then Letterman. But the acting really started, Scott, with commercials. I got a commercial agent, and they said, well, you'd be good in commercials because I had a very straight kind of boy next door look
mhm.
then, and
Still.
uh, and anyway, uh, it just got started from that, and I think CBS saw me on a commercial, on a pretty famous commercial. It was a Bud Light commercial where a flaming hoop appeared and dogs were jumping through the hoop, and
Mhm.
I'm there going, "What dogs? Geez." And a guy comes over and says, "I'd like a beer," and I go, "Showtime," and walk
Uh-huh.
away. And it got a lot of airplay, and I made a lot of money from that commercial. What I thought was a lot of money at the time,
Yeah.
and then I started to do some series work and guest stars on TV shows, and I was kind of a semi-regular on Baywatch, and
Mhm.
I was a semi-regular on the Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
That was 1980 that started.
Yeah. So, all of that happening in such a short period of time, how did you handle that, internally? Did you become one of these, crazy party guys, or
No,
did you, keep it pretty simple?
well, I got married to my first wife in 1979,
Okay.
and so that kept me somewhat corralled.
Uh-huh.
Um, but what can I say? I was thrilled by any success that I had. I can remember getting on the phone and going, "Hey, Dad, listen to this. I'm gonna be on the Tonight Show." "Oh my God, can you believe this? I'll be on the Tonight Show." And my
Uh-huh.
father's there with his pants up to his neck, going, "Oh Jesus, I'll slap you past payday, buddy. I'll hit you so hard by the time you stop rolling, your clothes will be out of style. How you like that?"
It's always good to have a dad to put you back in perspective.
Oh, the last thing, Scott, my dad said to me before I got in the car and drove out of the driveway at 101 Hillcrest Road in Syracuse was he looked at me and he said, "What the hell are you going to do when you get out there?" I mean, and I sold cars. I sold cars when I first went out there.
Uh-huh.
And then every night I'd be at the Comedy Store. Every day I'd be selling cars. And then when I started to get gigs in '75, I no longer worked regular jobs.
Uh-huh. Now your dad had to understand the attraction though, because
Yes,
being a magician himself,
and a
performing is
performer.
performing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, but I know that was a big move. I mean, you're going pretty much coast to coast, and I'm sure as a dad, I know I was concerned when both my kids moved, so I can understand the concern.
Yeah, maybe your kid will be going up like William Shatner soon.
Yeah. He did apply to be an astronaut, but, he's got a lot of knee problems, so I don't know if that's gonna happen, and he's also, 6'5", so they don't
Yeah, but
they
when
don't
you're
like the tall ones in the ship, so
yeah, but when you're weightless, it doesn't matter.
yeah. Um, so So that I mean, I guess that shows a certain amount of maturity on your point at a pretty young age because so many of the comics were just, they were coked up, they were I mean, partying and doing all that crazy stuff, and it seems like you kinda edged your way around that.
Well, I don't know whether I should tell this on myself, but I will. 1978, I was doing a play for the Mark Taper Forum Lab, which is a reasonably prestigious place.
Mhm.
And the guy who wrote the play had seen me at the Comedy Store, and he thought I'd be perfect to play Harry Houdini.
Mm. Alright.
And it was a show called Ormer Locklear, who was a wing walker back in the like 1918, and he
Uh-huh.
would walk on the wings of biplanes and stuff. And
Yeah.
it was about that era, and Houdini was one of the characters. There were four people in the cast, and incidentally, that's kind of how I started dating my first wife. But anyway, uh, how did we get onto this? Where's my mind?
I was talking about how you were able to eschew the, party life.
I didn't. That was the story I was going to tell. So in
Okay.
'78, all the cast members were saying, "Man, you got to try cocaine, man. You got to try cocaine. It's just fabulous, man. You get really high, you feel great." So I did it for 6 months of my life. I enjoyed the cocaine
uh
until I went to Cedar Sinai Hospital one night with my heart beating like this.
Yeah.
I had one more episode like that, and I said, "I will never do this again in my life because it could and probably would have killed me."
Uh-huh.
And it is
Yeah.
a very, very dangerous drug.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It most certainly is,
It's very addictive, and the high is addictive, and the lows the next day are awful.
yeah. Yeah, I've had, not 6 months of experience, but I've had experience, so I
Yeah,
understand,
yeah,
and,
good.
uh, I did it, one time before going to a Judas Priest concert, and then was arrested for fighting, and then, something more important came up, and they kicked us out of the car, my friend and I, so, yeah, that was a lot
Really?
of fun, yeah, yeah, so I think an actual murder or something happened, so we were small pickings for that.
So you just endured a small murder.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys can get out of the car now.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, remembering that, I met a woman that, cleaned me up really quick, so and we've been together ever since, so that's been a good
Oh,
thing.
that's the best.
Yeah. Um, so thinking about your you know, all of this happening so quickly and you being wanted for so many projects and things like that, how did it come around that you were able to manage the business side of it? Because that when that hits you so quickly, how do you manage that part?
Well, you get talked into various compartmentalizations,
Mhm.
like you need a manager, you need a business manager, you need an agent, you need a
Uh,
publicity person. And before you know it, half your money is gone.
uh,
And I did need some of those people back in the 80s and stuff, and then
mhm,
in the early 90s, halfway through the 90s. But eventually, you begin to sort of fire people one at a time as you find out they're not really doing much for you. I'll
uh-huh.
tell you a funny story. I can't think of the guy's name right now, but he only handled me and Albert Brooks,
Oh, okay.
and nothing was happening at the time. And I called him up on the phone and I said, "Gee, any business going on?" He says, "Listen to me, okay, kid. Let me tell you something. I only handle two guys, okay? I handle Albert Brooks and I handle Jeff Altman." I said,
Uh,
"Yeah, but I kind of need some work right now." He says, "Let me tell you what you do. You go out and get yourself a series, and when you do that, that's when I go to work."
he had that backwards.
Yes, the single funniest line I ever remember from show business was that.
Yeah.
You get yourself a series, and then we'll get you something, okay?
Oh, that's great. Um, how did you I gotta go back to your act. How did you come up with all these characters? Because they have to be rooted in something real. Because you played them so effectively. How did those start coming about?
Well, I when I worked, one of the characters I do that I enjoy is the character of Carl, which the
Hmm.
Showtime special I mentioned to you was based completely upon.
Hmm.
And he was a guy who was my sales manager at Universal City Datsun in
Okay.
1974. And uh, I remember coming in the first day and meeting the crew of guys I was working with that were selling Datsuns, now Nissan.
Uh-huh.
And I came in the second day, and Dave wasn't there. So I turned. Can I use a little language?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is fine.
So I turned to Fritz, who was my sales manager, who was became the character of Carl that I do,
Uh-huh.
and I said to him, "Fritz, where's Dave?" And he took a big drag of his cigarette and said, "He's a fucking ghost." Well, that just dropped me. I mean, I had never heard anything that funny, and
uh,
and so it was him that gave me a character. It was my dad that gave me a character, and other people were doing characters that, gee, I said, I do a character kind of like that. Maybe I should rev that up and get that on stage.
uh-huh.
So I was inspired by some characters, and I was not that I was stealing characters, but even before the guys on SNL were doing the pump up guys or whatever it was,
Yeah. Hans and Franz.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was doing a guy like that, who's like, my name is Jim Shorts, and they told me to use the free weights, but I didn't have the money, so I just, I'd like to use the more expensive kind. And those guys, those pumped up guys, always have that little head twitch going,
Yeah.
and I suppose that's when the blood actually gets to the brain,
Yeah.
you know. So I was offered up a lot of opportunity to do characters because I didn't have my act was characters with jokes and funny lines. That was
Mhm.
pretty much what I did, and physical comedy.
Mhm.
It wasn't the story kind of comedy you see today, where people are telling a lot about their lives, and then there's silence for a while, and then a big laugh, or it's kind of sort of funny for a while, and then a big laugh.
Mhm.
And my generation was, get that laugh every second if you can.
Yeah. And you were, I would put you more in the category of entertainer when you're on stage more than just stand-up comic because you were acting. You were acting out and
I was
it,
acting out.
yeah, yeah. I, that, I shouldn't have said that. You were really, you were putting on a show. It was like a one act play or something like that. And
Well, you had to do something for 45 minutes to get paid.
yeah, yeah. And I one of my favorite bits is please help me. Please when you get drunk. A- and I was always every time I was watching the TV guide and I'd catch you on Letterman or whatever, and is he going to do Please Help Me? And you always did, hey, but Please Help Me was sprinkled in various appearances
Well,
in different
please,
ways.
please help me if I recall the routine. I haven't done it in years, but it was a guy, and I was comparing how guys don't hold their alcohol uh, very well, and you get into the bathroom, and the toilet seat becomes like a bus.
Yeah.
You're talking to God. Oh, please, oh God, I feel so sick. Please help me. Please help me. you know and it's everybody's gone through that experience of drinking too much, being sick to their stomachs, and talking to God, please let me out of this.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And it was so funny.
Well,
Now
thank
you
you.
develop kind of a brotherhood of comics and brother and sisterhood with your comedy store contemporaries, and that has la- lasted through the years. I mean, Dave had you on a show because he liked you. You were friends, and George Miller was another one that he had on the show because he liked George. And
Johnny Weatherspoon,
yeah, Johnny
Tom
and
Dreesen.
mhm, Tommy,
uh,
yeah,
I think Tim did the show once.
yeah,
Tim was um, uh, Tim was great when he was performing.
yeah,
He sat down, and you got a little different side of Tim. You got the surfer guy,
yeah,
which he was a great
yeah,
surfer. Um, but you needed to see Tim in a nightclub, which was just exhausting. Your laughter.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the way I felt your performances were, and unfortunately, I never got to see you live on a stage because I'm in crappy South Bend, Indiana. But did you ever make your way to South Bend, Indiana?
No, I had that on the list of cities to avoid.
Yeah,
No, I certainly would have done a gig had there been one there.
yeah.
I used to work Indianapolis quite frequently.
Okay, yeah, yeah. And Indy's still a pretty good comedy town.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, they've got about a million comics there.
Yeah.
I've talked to quite a few of them. So this
Okay.
brotherhood and sisterhood, because I would probably put like Elaine Boozler in
I was just
in
going to
in that
mention that
mix.
name.
Yeah,
She was
um,
she was the best. I think, for my money, the best of all time.
yeah, yeah, and uh, unfortunately doesn't do podcasts, and
Is that
so
right?
yeah, yeah. I've reached out to her, and couple of my friends that are a little higher up the echelon have reached out, and I think she's just kind of done talking about the business. So
Well, she told me in a phone conversation about 3 years ago. She said, "I've done my last show."
yeah, yeah.
So uh, I guess it was 2 years ago that I said, "I've done my last stand-up show."
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've walked away from a couple different careers, and you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
wanna look back. You're just kinda done, and that's, I can certainly understand that. So, getting back to this friendship that you created and the the what happened at the comedy store, and the strike and just everything that happened, that is so much for to happen in a young person's life, and yet you guys, I think that was part of the bonding process. I mean, going through that so much strife and striking and doing everything that happened there really built a bond, and you guys, it's it's amazing how much talent was cultivated there, and and I think it was because you guys were almost like a petri dish of comedy, and y I guess you might have just, the the, uh, the
Petri
group
dish.
of
Petri dish is exactly the right word.
yeah.
People have referred to me very often as a growing fungus. So, there was a tremendous amount of camaraderie, Scott. There was a,
Yeah.
I remember walking the line with Dave Letterman, and from that developed a very, very strong friendship. I mean, he's one of my closest friends, and if not among the top three closest friends I have.
Mhm.
And so that was a nice thing. And I was friendly with George Miller, who left all his comedy material to me.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I have a box in my closet filled all with George Miller material.
Wow.
And he as far as being prolific, he was about at the top of the list.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he was really groundbreaking because he's a little bit more like the comics you see today.
I might disagree with that, Scott,
Okay. Yeah, well,
because I
he
think the comics today take a longer time to get to what you would call a punchline.
right, right, yeah.
And George was um, uh, joke after joke after joke. I mean,
Yeah.
there were instant segues, whereas you see somebody today talking about something for 15 minutes,
Yeah, right.
and in that 15 minutes, plenty of laughs. But George was bang bang bang.
Right. I guess he was conversational, and
Yes, yes,
a little bit more lower energy than like you or like a Sam Kinison or somebody like that.
yeah.
Yeah, so that, I guess that's where I got my parallel. But um where was I going now? Uh,
You're running a
I'm s-
podcast, Scott.
okay, yeah. I'm starstruck.
Stop it.
But but along with this camaraderie, I know that everybody went in a lot of different directions
Mhm.
because, like I mentioned, Mark before. He did his stuff there, and then he went on to screenwriting,
Yes,
and he did that one movie, the Last House on the Left, that was super low budget movie that Roger Ebert liked for some reason, and then he's still a cult favorite and at the horror conventions. But it's amazing how people went different directions, and I mean, you definitely went different directions with the comedy, um, doing your act and doing TV. But like you said, 2 years ago was your last stand up, and you have
well,
actually.
of course, COVID hit too, and so
Yeah, right. But you've kind of morphed it all the way back. You've kind of gone back to the magic thing, and now you are Jeff Altman, the card magician.
that's true.
Yeah. So
I because of my daughter, unfortunately, I mentioned before, broke her bone in her hand, and I have to go to New York City on Monday. She's being operated on Tuesday, and I missed a convention I go to every year in Buffalo as a result. It's going on right now,
mhm,
and I couldn't take the chance of catching COVID because of the hospital environment that I'll be in, and on Tuesday and Monday and Tuesday, and so I couldn't go, and I'm very disappointed.
yeah. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah,
I'm laying low because my son's getting married next week. So
is he
we're
really?
yeah, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So that's gonna be fun. So we're
Yeah,
going to Nashville to see a band tomorrow, but the venue says you have to show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test. So I feel better about that as long as I keep my mask on and stuff. So
absolutely.
yeah,
And
then we're
at
going.
the, at these magic conventions, you get a lot of guys going, "What? A vaccine? Oh, the vaccines don't work. I take I take this hydrochloroquine and it's
Yeah.
done marvelous things for me."
Yeah. I'm as clean as a swimming pool.
Yes, hydroxychloroquine
Yeah, yeah.
does
It's
not work, nor does ivermectin.
yeah.
So the studies show,
Yeah.
but some people swear by it, and God bless them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hope they live through it. And
Sure, yeah, that's for sure.
so you must be, I mean, your dad is legendary and his name is still talked about among magicians all the time. So you must be kind of a draw as other up and coming magicians and stuff like that. So you've kind of probably become not only a godfather of comedy, but a godfather of magic at the same time.
Well, Godfather's a little strong, but I, different than my dad, have put a lot of my tricks and inventions with cards in print in
Uh-huh.
different books. I don't know if you know the name Harry Lorraine.
I haven't heard that one.
Harry Lorraine used to go on the Tonight Show, and he would memorize the name of 500 guests and then have them sit down one at a time.
Oh,
Mr. Kingsley, you sit down. Mrs. White, you sit down now. And then he would leave one guy at the end and remember his name, and the audience would, right on their feet, standing ovation.
yeah, yeah, I remember that now. I yeah,
Well, he was also a superb card handler and
okay.
wrote many books on card magic. And I published a fair amount of material in his books, along with a lot of other books
Mhm.
as well. So
S
my dad didn't do that. My dad was just strictly a reputation guy.
Yeah,
Whereas somebody can, kind of revisit my career by looking at some of the tricks that I have in print.
right, and I mean, you're kinda documenting stuff that dad showed you anyway, right?
Well, no, yes, some.
Yeah,
The very first trick I really had in print that made there's a famous course in magic called the Tarbell course.
uh-huh,
And they did an extra edition. In fact, Harry Lorraine did the extra edition, Tarbell #7, and I had a trick in there that was based partially on an idea of my father's and an idea of mine,
uh-huh.
and so that appears in that book, and it happens to be a very good trick.
Wow. So, I've never seen you do magic. When you perform magic, I know you're humorous. How what what have you taken from your act, and what have you just said, "I'm never gonna do this again"?
Well, it's strange you ask. 2 years ago, my friend Dean Stern, who's a great magician in Bangor, Maine, and I did a lecture in Buffalo, strangely,
Uh-huh,
and just the two of us. And I did card stuff, but I introduced myself with kind of what I was doing with my act at that time.
uh-huh,
I'd say, geez, I had a hard time coming in here, man. No one picked me up. There was no one at the airport. I didn't get in until 3 o'clock in the morning. The flights were delayed. I don't want to say what airline I was taking, but they fly a lot in the Southwest.
uh-huh.
And so there was nobody there to pick me up. There was not no the cabs had stopped. It was 3 a.m. So I ended up taking a bus, and I had never driven a bus before, and it was that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
conversational kind of
yeah,
crap, and then I got into the cards.
uh-huh. That's good. I hope I get to see you, do magic 'cause,
Well,
that
here we go. I'll fan the deck in front of your eyes like this.
alright.
You can see the cards, and
Uh-huh.
I want you to just let me get rid of the jokers. Can you see the cards?
Move them to your left a little
There we
bit.
go.
Okay, I see them.
You see? Did you get a card? You're thinking of one.
Yep,
You're thinking of one card.
yep.
God, I don't know. You could have been thinking of anything. I'm going to put up one card for the first time. Name the card you just thought of.
7 of diamonds.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I thought you'd say the king of clubs. Now
Oh,
let
he
me
was
show
right
you something.
next.
Let me show you something. The seven of diamonds, I think, is in this pack. I know it's in this pack, But you said the king of clubs. That's because you forgot your card.
Okay.
No, I actually had the seven of diamonds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's hard to do this on a podcast,
Yeah.
but I made the card change.
Yeah, I
You couldn't
saw
see,
that.
you couldn't see below my neck, but that
Well, I do know that the king of clubs is right by the 7 of diamonds when I saw it.
I knew you were thinking of one of the two
Yeah,
as I
yeah,
fanned the cards.
uh So that's so I don't want you to explain that, but that's almost steering somebody towards the right card, right?
Well, no, no,
Okay, okay,
not exactly.
okay, okay,
There's a little bit of sleight of hand involved.
okay, okay. Well, I don't even wanna know. So, yeah, I would rather just say, "Oh,
Uh,
how do you
that,
do that?"
that's what people used to say after I performed stand up. Oh,
That's because they'd been laughing so much and they could finally breathe.
oh, that's very sweet.
So, y are you do you keep up you mentioned Bert Kreischer, do you keep up with, the more current comedians, and do you watch them?
Yeah, I mean, not I mean, Sebastian Maniscalco was performing at the Comedy Store right when I left,
Mhm,
so I saw the inception of his career,
mhm.
and I mean, isn't he the biggest draw out there now?
Yeah, he's big, yeah.
He's big. Who else? Mention some people who are real big now. I'll tell you if I've seen them.
Nate Bargatze?
Nate Bargatze, really?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's huge.
His father is a comedian. Excuse me, a magician.
Yeah, he is, and, his dad, will tour with him and open for him.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, and his dad is the coolest.
Oh, that's neat because I have a friend here in Raleigh who's one of the best card guys in the country, and he knows Mr. Bargatze.
Yeah, and he is, he's definitely got a great sense of humor because I mean, he's got you rolling, and I know that that's part of his misdirect because some of his stuff is so close up, and he's got like an audience member up there with him, and yeah, he's very very funny, and Nate is a huge draw.
Is he?
He's one of the
Yeah,
biggest ones out
I've
there.
seen Nate. He's solid.
Yeah.
Name somebody else.
Well, Jim Gaffigan, he's
Sure.
big. Yeah. Let me see.
I know Jim.
Bill
Who?
Burr, Bill Burr.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So he's
Brian
big.
Regan.
Brian Regan.
I'm thinking of another kid who was on SNL a couple of times, who's very good. I don't know why I can't think of his name right now.
Okay.
Everybody knows him. Um, he very monologue. He's always dressed in a suit and tie.
Oh,
Uh,
I know who you're talking about.
we're both blank as farts right now.
Yes. Mulaney.
Yeah,
Yeah,
John
John
Mulaney,
Mulaney. Yeah.
tremendous.
So what do you like and what don't you like about the modern comedians?
Well, they really surprise me at how they're able to talk about a subject for a long period of time, and within that context, really squeeze a lot of humor out of it.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas, I was, kind of peripatetic in that I would smash my head on a stool, get up and go, hey, hey, hey,
Mm, mhm.
get the audience going, and then do something else real quick, and then tell something about a commercial, and then move to a character, and it was happening, at the speed of light, as
Mhm.
far as comedy goes these days.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, but I had to do that to get laughs. I mean, if I had tried to stand there and go, well, I started out at Syracuse, New York, and then I went to college, and then I came out to the West Coast, and then I started lighting farts for a living. I mean, I just would. I was not capable of doing that. I had to do
Yeah.
something in the moment that I thought would get laughs. And I think Robin and I were similar in that way. Although I did precede Robin.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and so you mentioned what you like. What don't you like about modern comedians?
Well, let's see. I don't think there's anybody as funny as Leno doing stand up or
Mhm,
Seinfeld. I don't think there's anybody as smart and funny and turn of a sentence. Uh, and I'm talking about the funniest person I've ever known, and that's David Letterman.
mhm,
You don't see. I mean, the guys that are all doing late night shows right now are all very good. They're not a bad one among them,
mhm,
and yet nobody compares to Dave.
mhm. It's funny, I think, subconsciously emulate Dave because I'm a Midwestern guy. He went to Ball State. I wasn't that far from Muncie, and
He's going
I
to Muncie. He's going to Muncie on Thursday.
is he?
Yeah, yeah, he's going to Ball State on Thursday to do something.
Yeah. I worked in Indy. I managed a restaurant in Indy in the mid '80s, and one of the waitresses that worked there also worked at the deaf school in Indianapolis, and he was a big supporter of the deaf school. And she came into work one day and she said, "Yeah, Dave Letterman showed up."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "You could have called." Because I wanted to meet him so bad. But anyhow, I used to subconsciously, I think, emulate him. And
Didn't we all?
y-
That's what I'm saying. If
yeah,
anybody in my generation changed comedy and television, there's no question that it was Letterman.
yeah, yeah. But my mom would say, "Oh, you're just acting like that David Letterman again."
And then your dad would say, I don't think he's funny. I don't dig that crap.
Yeah.
He ain't funny to me. I like Johnny Carson,
Yep.
who was arguably the greatest maybe of all time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's funny because when I do stand up, people and I know that my voice is my the timbre of my voice and all that's similar to Dave's, and everybody says, "Oh, you remind me a lot of Dave Letterman up there," and I'm
Really?
like I'm like, "Oh golly, thank you."
Oh, gee golly.
I put some gollies in my act anyway, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's because they got to know where I'm from.
But
But yeah,
he's changed, Scott, the way we looked at TV. In fact, that was the biggest mistake perhaps I ever made in my life. At the very time, variety shows, which I starred in one in 1980 called Pink Lady and Jeff. You remember that?
oh yeah,
Oh yes. Um,
it's on the YouTube.
oh God, help me. Um, but at the time that phase of show business was disappearing, Dave came on TV.
Uh huh.
And his whole thing was anti-television.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah,
was, it was the opposite of what we had seen for well, let's see, that was 70s, 80s. So 30 years we had been watching straight ahead TV, and
yeah.
now Dave shows up and it's all skewed
Uh
differently.
huh. Yeah,
And I was just very lucky to have been able to do his show to keep my career alive.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And once again, my apologies for Pink Lady. I'm sorry that that happened to you, but
Well, they couldn't speak English. I mean, they
yeah,
really couldn't speak English, so they talked and sung phonetically.
yeah,
And the two girls, but in Japan, they were equivalent to the West's Beatles. They were
yeah,
to the East what the West was to the Beatles. So
yeah,
the,
y-
Fred Silverman had the idea that if we could put a comedian along with these two girls, there'd be a great show. And they went down the list and they stopped very quickly. Let's see, Altman. Yeah, okay, let's see him. Yeah, that Altman boy ought to be good with this.
Oh man. Well, it's you can laugh about it now. I'm sure it was a pain in the ass when you were doing it.
No, it was fun. I got to do things that I just can't get over that I did.
Uh-huh.
I got to work with Sid Caesar for 3 weeks.
Mhm.
I got to work with Jerry Lewis for a week.
Mhm.
I got to work with see a lot of guests. Roy Orbison came on the show,
Yeah.
and scores of other people. The Red Buttons and who gave me some advice that was very good. I should have listened to, but no, really. And uh, just a bevy of great celebrities, but you know, no one was watching. Although we got a 24 share, which today would make us number 111.
Uh-huh. Oh, man. Um, so thinking about what you know from your career about comedy, if, say I was a 19-year-old kid and I wanted a mentor, what would you tell me are the 3 most important things I need to do to be a good comedian?
That's a good question. One, uh, unless it's a city that is rife with comedy, like let's say Houston,
Mhm,
Chicago, but primarily, really to do it, you got to be in L.A. or New York.
mhm,
And in my generation, it was L.A. It just
mhm,
shifted. The Tonight Show had just shifted from New York to L.A. And as a result, everybody came to the West Coast.
mhm,
And uh, so my first thing would be in a place where you're going to see a lot of great stand-up, so you can understand what the bar is that you need to get to.
mhm.
Two, try and introspect as much as you can about what's funny about your own life, characters and people and stories in your own life. And number three, go back to college.
Yeah. Good advice. I'm glad my kids did that.
Yes, I'm even glad I went to college, believe it or
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
I
I
did
mean
I got to Johns Hopkins in 1969 and the fall of 69, and I walked into a calculus class. And from the instant I walked in until I walked out of that first class, I had no idea what the fucking guy was talking about. And I got an eight, not a nine, an eight on the midterm. So I mean, there's no curve anywhere in the universe that can save your ass at an eight.
No. Oh, that's funny. And you know what's funny about math because I didn't know that my son was like this math genius the whole time he, he was growing up and cuz he didn't want to go to school.
Really?
He said school was boring. He said I already know all this stuff. But I didn't believe him. So we made him go to school and then he goes to college and it turns out he's a math whiz and he didn't get it from me. I'm a wordsmith. I'm not I anything beyond addition and subtraction, multiplication. I'm no X's and Y's and stuff like that. I
Well,
can't
you
do
can
that.
join the Jeff Altman Club.
Yeah. All right. Well, I tell you, Jeff, it has been an honor to talk to you.
Thank you.
And the funny thing is I wouldn't have even reached out, but one of my comedy buddies, what's his name, Trent, had you on his
Trent Mabry.
yeah, and I'm having him on my show because he just moved out to New York, from Indy,
Yes,
and
I've
I
stayed in
thought,
touch with him. I've stayed
yeah,
in touch with him.
that's good.
He's a good
Uh,
kid.
yeah, he really is,
He's
and
a
he's
very
very
nice kid.
funny. Yeah, and I said, well, holy shit! If Trent can get him on, I think I should be able to get him.
No question.
But you were,
Can I mention another podcast that I did?
yeah.
I was on Gilbert Gottfried's podcast.
Oh, excellent! I love Gil.
Gil's great. I mean,
Yeah,
he's great because there is nothing else like him.
yeah.
I mean,
And
Gilbert
and
is
how,
good.
how many minutes were your credits that he read?
Well, he works with a guy named Frank Santapadre who does a lot of the research.
Yeah,
And
but Gil, when he starts a show, he says everything you've ever done.
yeah, he did. He
Yeah.
did. He did do that. But the interesting thing was Dave Letterman and I were on a show called the Starland Vocal Band in 1977.
Uh-huh.
And son of a bitch, if Gilbert didn't start singing the words to that song, I mean,
Sky rockets in
it's in
flight.
flight, afternoon delight. So that was
That's
fun. But
hilarious.
Scott, this has been as much fun as I've had.
Yeah, well, great. just today though, right?
I don't know. Yes, this has been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah,
I really
this has
appreciate you
been
having me on.
yeah, this has been a big one for me, and I really appreciate the time you took, and this is the like I said, this is big for me. I'm collecting my, Comedy Store action figurines, and now I've got another one.
Yeah, well, I know this will get edited down to 7 minutes, so
Yeah. Very little editing because that takes work, so, yeah, and I'm still doing everything myself.
bless
Well,
your heart.
thanks a lot, Jeff.
You're welcome.